Introducing the latest addition to the BBISHOPPCM's World Laptop Museum. This is an IBM Thinkpad 390E. Sounds a lot like a Mercedes-Benz. In fact, it isn't far from it. It was a very costly but very effectively built, very well built, very simple laptop designed for people in the business world and anyone who gets things done. The ThinkPads were a very well-built machine back then, and they still are today, comparative to others. They weren't pretty, but they were basically monolithic slabs of plastic, and they contained a lot of top-notch technology and features for the time period. But mainly that included a quality, stable platform, fairly easy to service, fairly rugged, and that's basically all I have to say. And they had some innovative features, as I said earlier. In this particular model, unlike the 760 series, which has a flip-up keyboard, IBM went with a less expensive option, and they used little flip-down feet that could be positioned in the downward position if you're wanting to have a better typing angle. Most of the components can be serviced from the bottom. Our optical drive, which includes the floppy drive assembly, comes out as one unit just by flipping this, flip this lever down and pull. Then you just grab it like so, and the whole unit comes out. Pretty simple. This actually has a production date on it. It's March 5th of 1999, making this one of the earlier releases of the 390 series. This is a Pentium 2 366 originally would have shipped with 64 megs of RAM and a 6.5 gig hard drive. Today it features 128 megs of RAM and a 20 gig hard drive that I recently installed. The original drive had failed when I pulled this out of the storage closet it was in. It had been sitting for years. And it just wouldn't start up. The drive was clunking around, so I said, okay. So I took the original drive out and I put in a 20 gig IBM TravelStar. I have plenty of them. And I popped it into the drive bay here. The original drive was a full height, or almost like a half-inch height, 2.5-inch drive, and I replaced it with a 1/4-inch height. So, you know, it's a little downsized, but it does the job. On this side, we have our battery, which is removed, again, like the optical drive, by pressing down on this lock, pull forward, and pull out. The battery, to my knowledge, is original to this laptop. This is an original battery for an IBM. Actually, wait a minute. No, it's not an original. This has been replaced. Here we go. Product of laptopsforless.com. So this is not the original battery. Make note of that. But it is a pretty good quality replacement if it's anything. The battery still holds a charge, but not as long as it should. So let's take a look at the available ports and other options. Alright, here we go. Now, on this side, we have our Type 1, 2, and 3 PCM-CIA slot. We've got our microphone jack, audio out, and headphone. Or is that audio in? It could be audio in and a headphone jack right there. We've got a built-in modem. I believe it's a 56K modem. In 1999, it ought to have been. It is not missing any doors or covers, but there may be a cover missing here. I can't really tell. I'm not actually sure that's... No, I don't think there is anything missing. Let's see. Looks like we have an air vent there. It's got some white substance paint or something here. I can get that off with a magic eraser, but I don't have any left at home, so I'm going to have to wait to clean that up. But we've got our parallel port, our mouse port, 9-pin serial, and VGA, of course our power. And on the other side, we've got our infrared window, which needs to be cleaned. There was masking tape on this. I imagine somebody did that because who knows why. But anyway, and we've got our S-video output and our one and only USB 1.0 port. In 1999, when this laptop was released, people were still using parallel and serial for most of their accessories. And of course, PS2 still was a standard port on almost every machine. So they didn't place much emphasis on USB connectivity back then. It was there, but almost every printer still required parallel. Like all ThinkPads of this time period, it has two latches for the screen, and neither of them are broken. I couldn't have found a better ThinkPad. This sucker is in good condition. It was used, and there's a little bit of wear on the spacebar that you can clearly see, and of course a little bit of wear from where the palm rest would have been used. But other than that, it's in as good condition as you can get. It would be hard to find something in better shape. Because like I said, most of these laptops were, because of their price point, they were targeted towards people who got things done. And because of their reputation for durability, they were often placed in positions of extreme use. Travelers, for example, would use these, and they often got broken. Stuff would get spilled onto them. Fortunately, I believe this one was used by a local school district in the administrative office, so it didn't really get a lot of abuse. It does have a fresh install of Windows 98. I believe it's first edition. I couldn't find my second edition CD, so I used the first edition one, but it does the job. We're going to fire it up. And we are running on battery power right now. I let her charge overnight. Not that that matters, but take a look at the BIOS utility. Now this unit more than likely has a dead CMOS battery. Replacing that battery would be an act of Congress, and I don't really feel like doing it. Why would I do it? So, let's see. In configuration, we have very few options. IBM wasn't big on system customization. Their BIOS menus were really quite sparse. A lot like HP and Dell at the time. If you really wanted a full-featured BIOS utility with many options, you would have to go with a less expensive brand. So the memory menu tells me I have 130 megabytes, which is actually 128. I got the BIOS version. It is version 1.17.11 for video and ROO_H5 for system. Wake on LAN is enabled. Flash over LAN is also enabled. Default configuration, which we're going to not do. It does have a serial infrared. These are all the controls for the system power options and such. And in others we have the reset brightness, normal. Let's put it on high. Brightness, by the way, is controlled by an analog slider, which was often the case on some of the older laptops. Startup screen is enabled. Let's see, we're going to boot device display. We'll switch to LCD. Exit and save F10. I'll set the system clock and see if it sticks. I don't think it will. A lot of these more expensive machines had rechargeable clock batteries. Whether or not this one's taking a charge is, well, it's probably not going to. And as far as I know, the ThinkPad series had two batteries. You had your sleep battery, which would allow the machine to remain in sleep mode while the main battery was swapped out. And they would have a clock battery. The sleep battery wasn't a very long-lasting battery. It would only last maybe a few minutes while you swapped out the main battery or gained access to a power connector. All the system drivers were located not on Lenovo's site like I had hoped. I found them on notebookdrivers.com, which is a site that I assumed was one of those. And the internet is filled with these. Basically, malware virus websites. That didn't seem to be the case. I found everything I needed, and they all worked, including the battery calibration tool. and the IBM Thinkpad setup menu. Let's take a look at that. It actually lands in the Programs menu under Thinkpad. We've got Fuel Gauge, which gives us our battery level. And it's basically a mirror of what the start bar, the taskbar has. And it looks like a full battery at this point. I did get the Hibernation file installed, and I'm going to test out and see if that works too. I'm kind of curious. Let's go back into the Thinkpad menu. Thinkpad configuration. This is the tool that every Thinkpad had up until very recently. I think even the new ones have a version of this. The menus have gotten different. The options have changed, but yeah. So you can switch from energy conservation mode, maximum performance, maximum battery life, and custom. That's a press of a button. As a matter of fact, function F11, I think, is supposed to do that very same function. Although, sometimes those work, sometimes they don't. It's hard to tell what they'll do. Okay, so function F2 brings up the fuel gauge. And function F3, I believe, is supposed to turn the display off, which it does, but only momentarily. And function F4 is supposed to put it to sleep. But I wanted to try the hibernation tool and see if that even works. So let's do a shutdown, and Hibernate is not even enabled. Let's do that. And power options, power management. Yeah. Let's see. Hibernate by power switch. And it doesn't show it as an option. Maximum performance, maximum battery life, power meter. Cool. Yeah, I turned off all the options for power management. If you're running an older laptop like this one and you plan on using it for anything, I would recommend turning the hard disk sleep function off. You don't want to force an old drive to unnecessarily spin up and down because it causes stress. If the drive is brand new and your data's backed up and it's something that you're using on a daily basis, that's fine. But we're dealing with a drive that is pushing 15 years of age. The drive that's in here now was made in 2003. It's still very old. But I highly recommend not having that enabled. So, oh yeah, Hibernate. Let's see. I want to see this thing hibernate. Because I installed the Hibernate file. Alright, let's apply that. But it still doesn't show Hibernate in the shutdown option. So I'm going to press the power switch. And it should go into Hibernate. Let's see what she does. It looks like it's saving the data to the hard drive, so that's good. So what Hibernate does, for those of you who don't know, and there it goes. It's going. Hibernate takes the contents of system RAM and it stores them to the hard drive on either a hidden partition or onto a file that's earmarked. It's like a file that just takes up a set amount of space. And it should be enough to store the contents of the memory. And that's how it works. And then once all the contents are stored, the machine shuts off. And when you restart it, it loads from that file and it brings you right back to where you started from. It's a feature that laptops even today still have. There it goes. Now we're going to wake it back up again. And of course, if I were to hold down the power switch, it would do a complete system power off like it would on any PC. And we're waking it up. And later on, we'll put this machine on the internet. And I've got a few other things I want to show you, but that'll be in a separate video. But I wanted to get at least this part of the video out of the way while we're in, good lighting conditions. And we'll bring it upstairs, which seems to be a black hole of light. I don't know why that is. But no matter what, I can't light up that room enough. I mean, I could have 100 watt bulbs going and it will still be dark. So anyway. And we are waking up from Hibernate. Here we go. I see drive activity. Whenever I test out an old machine, one of the first sites I go to is the Space Jam site, because it's still around and it works on older browsers quite well. This is going to take a little while to wake up for some reason, so I'm going to pause the video and then we'll resume later on. Well, she never woke up completely. There's something preventing it from waking up the right way, so I did a shutdown by doing Control-Alt-Delete and pulling up the task menu. So we're going to start her up, and we're going to put her straight on the internet. Let's see what happens. I've got it connected to a hardwired cable. This is the fastest internet connection this laptop has ever seen. Pentium 2. It's amazing how long the Pentium 2 was in production. I believe these processors were used at least until like 2001. Pentium 3 then took over, but the Pentium 3 had a very short life. I mean, the Pentium 3s were in production well before this laptop was made, but they were just so expensive. And, I mean, there was a period of time when Intel just had, I guess it's not unlike today where they have the Core 2, or the Core i3, i5, and i7s. Plus, they have a couple of other product lines out there like the Xeon. So they've always had a few different choices of processor to choose from when you were buying a laptop. But the Pentium 2 was certainly one of the less expensive options that wasn't a Celeron. Celerons were basically defective processors with faulty level 2 cache. That's really what they were. I believe Intel had a large amount of them. They're like, what do we do with all these processors? Well, we can disable the level 2 cache and sell them as neutered processors. And that's how the Celeron was born. So we've got the Ethernet cable plugged in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch Internet Explorer 4.0. We got our Google. Look at how quickly that loaded, by the way. Got our Google page. We're going to do a quick Google search. I'm going to do a search for Space Jam. Alright. Of course, the first thing that pops up is the Warner Brothers site. Now, of course, we have the script errors. I believe there are ads that load on this page that are not working. And we're going to go to Pressbox Shuttle. No Space Jam news at the moment. Go back to the Space Jam homepage to see more of the site. Copyright 1996. So this site has been unchanged as long as I've been on the internet. I first logged on to the internet in 1997. And this website has not changed since then. So when this movie came out, I was part of the target audience. So this website was targeted towards kids my age, which is kind of funny, and it's never changed. What does Jam Central do? Photos from the film, the trailer, the filmmakers, and production notes. I do believe this is one of the oldest sites on the planet from a commercial enterprise that hasn't changed ever. Still pops up with that damn script error, but hey, what are you going to do? Look at all these old photos. Nice. Let's go into my favorite portion of this site, the Stellar Souvenirs. These are free downloadable files that anyone can download. There are screensavers for Windows 95, of course. And there are, of course, We've got our sound clips. I want to point something out that I made sure to mention in the previous 8 versions of this video that I've shot so far. Yeah, this is take number 8, I think. During the dawn of the internet age, there was no Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. The Googles wasn't around. The primary search engines of choice were Yahoo, AOL NetFind, Lycos, Dogpile, which was a combination of 3 different search engines, Ask Jeeves, which became Ask.com. Those were the search engines people were using back then. People communicated through either AOL Instant Messenger, ICQ, chat rooms, relay chat forums. I mean, there were many ways to communicate, but there was no social networking. What social networking was back then were compiling lists of addresses of people you knew and emailing them things. My mom was big into this back then. When we first got the internet in the Bishop household in 1997, ironically on a machine virtually identical to that one right there, that Tandy 425 we got over there. My mother spent a lot of her time emailing audio clips to her friends, and then she'd receive them, and then she'd forward them to other people, and then so on and so forth. That was social networking in the 90s, really. And so the types of files that people would send each other were JPEG files, WAV files, Midi files. Before MP3 files were, prevalent, people would they would download Midi files of their favorite songs. And I've already actually found a few of them that I'm going to show you, or let you hear. So let's do that. So let's go ahead and download a WAV file. And I'm going to save it to the disk. And we're going to save it. Now WAV files were short audio clips because the audio format is uncompressed, so the size is enormous. People would email each other these files as jokes. They would be little audio clips, they would be songs, very short songs, they would be sound bites from popular movies, and that's actually why we're doing this right now. And the file that we just downloaded was this one here. It's going to open up in Winamp, which was another big deal back then. Winamp was one of the most popular MP3 file players at the time. So, listen to that for a sec. So that's just a quick soundbite from the movie. And people would just send those to each other. And then one of the most popular pastimes of that generation was you would replace your Windows system sound files, event files, with these little cheap audio clips. And I've already done this by placing this file here, which is Michael Jordan saying, "You guys are nuts," which was another download from that website. Oh, I got my audio turned way down. Let's try that again.
You guys are nuts.
So I took that file and I replaced my system shutdown sound with that file. This is something people did back then. And when I was starting out doing computer repair in the late 90s, most of what I did was cleaning up all the crap that people would put on their computers back then. One of the notable pieces of crapware was Bonsai Buddy. And stuff like that. That was what people were screwing their computers up with back then. It wasn't usually viruses. I didn't really see many viruses back then. I just saw a lot of poorly written software. People putting 5-second WAV files as startup files on their machines so that they would play like a song when the machine turned on. But if I shut the... No, I must have reverted.
You guys are nuts.
No, it didn't. There it is. Just wanted to show that to you guys. But back then, most of what was going wrong with computers in my neighborhood stemmed from either buying poor hardware, which was all they could afford. Computers were expensive back then. I mean, $1,700 for a basic home computer was a lot of money. Nowadays, it's exorbitant. Nowadays, a simple home computer costs half that, if not less. So, back in those days, people were scrimping on hardware by buying the cheapest stuff they could find or buying stuff used. So most of my early teens were spent fixing junk computers that people were buying, and then going back after they go on the internet and download a bunch of screensavers that are full of advertisements and malware and crap. It was a different game, but not so much. Almost nobody in my neighborhood had antivirus software. If they did, it wasn't updated, so it didn't do anything. I started pushing people into antivirus software starting in about 2001, 2002. I didn't start using it until about that time period, and it was only because I got free copies from my friends. So it actually came right back with that window. I'm surprised it did that. So anyway, now we talked a little bit about Midi files. So one of the second most popular pastimes was to find Midi files of your favorite song. So let's go ahead and find one. Remember, we're browsing the web on a modern connection on a Pentium 2 with only 128 megs of RAM using Internet Explorer 4.0. It's amazing what we can still do using such old software. You can't really do this with Windows 95 anymore. Unfortunately, Internet Explorer 4.0 or 3.0 and below doesn't really do the job. So let's see if we can't find some. Let's see if we can't find some files here. That didn't work. MIDI World doesn't work. Howard's link page. Oh, I remember this site. This site was around way back then. China Japan. It was a GeoCities site, and it was in Japanese. It was a Steely Dan site. Unbelievable. It's still around. Look at that. Gaslighting Abbey. This. Oh my God! I'm just having a wicked retro attack, because this is the site that I used way back in the day to download Steely Dan MIDI files. No shit, it's still around. Alright, well, let's hear it, shall we? It's going to play in Winamp. That's my default player. Unbelievable. It's still there. And it still works. So, now, MIDI files were incredibly popular because they were so small. Now, you saw how fast that file downloaded. Now, the actual file size is a mere 103 kilobytes. So, picture this. You're browsing the web on a 33.6 connection, and you don't want to pay for music, or you want to discover new artists. MP3 files were out of reach because they were so damn huge. An MP3 file was, at least 5 megabytes in size, and on a 33.6 connection, that 5 megabyte file could take half an hour to download. God forbid somebody pick up the phone receiver in the other room, or somebody call the house and you have call waiting. So, MIDI files helped to satisfy the musical tastes of the earlier web browsers, myself included. There was one site that I used to use called Laura's MIDI Heaven, and it was full of popular artists' music programmed into a Midi file. Now, a Midi file, for those of you who don't know, is the result of, they can be composed on a computerized keyboard, or a higher-end MIDI keyboard, is what they're called. Some better quality keyboards could actually lay down multiple tracks, and you could have your keyboards, your guitars, your drums, all of that layered on top of each other, and then exported as a .mid file, or connected to a computer and mixed on using software like Cakewalk to lay down all the tracks and get them all balanced out. It's kind of like GarageBand from the 90s. And a lot of keyboardists would create these files, create libraries of MIDI files of popular music, and release it through their website, and then someone would download that 128K file and then email it to their friends. That was social networking, not today's social networking. It was a totally different world. I actually have the real version of this song on this computer. It's from a CD rip that I did back in 2001. And I'll show you what, I'll play a portion of the song so you can hear some of it. And you can see how close it was to the real song. I think it's on here. No, maybe it wasn't. No, I don't think I had this album by then. No, it's not on here. But if you know Steely Dan and you know the song Gaslighting Abbey, which was released in 1999 or 2000 on the Two Against Nature album, you'll know what this song is and what it really sounds like. But you know, when you're sitting at your computer doing homework, which I did a lot of back then, I would just queue up a couple of MIDI files to, you know, keep myself entertained. I didn't really have a huge CD collection, and Napster hadn't really hit the scene by that point. You know, the Creative Labs Rio was just it was a very new product. MP3 files were hard to come by. You either had to make your own through CD rips, which I actually have a program on here, I believe, that I can rip CDs with. It should be in my documents, and no, I have Clone CD, which was a CD duplication software that I used heavily, and I'm not seeing that. Anywho, I got my sync software for my, so here's what I did. I had a CD filled with backup files that I made. It's like a snapshot of my sophomore year in high school. A lot of my schoolwork is on here from that year alone. And I've got all of my, whatever MP3 files I did have back then, which I made either found off the web or made myself. Here's another Steely Dan song, Home at Last. I was a huge Dan fan, and I still am to this day. I've been to 2 concerts, but that's neither here nor there. Free Rip MP3, there it is. That's the program I used. Free Rip MP3, which was, let's install it. And let's go ahead and rip a CD. Why not? We've got enough hard drive space. We've got a CD drive. Let's put it to work. So here's Free Rip MP3. It's got old advertisements for sites that don't exist anymore. And because I am such a huge SDAN fan, I have the Royal Scam here, which I think I've already ripped on this machine, but that's not relevant right now. Let's see how slow that was. So if you wanted MP3 files for your new Creative Labs Rio, you would pop in your favorite CD that you either borrowed from a friend or owned, and you would load it into the machine and hit the refresh button. It then reads from the optical drive, and it should show you a list of tracks. Now it's trying to Yeah, look at this. Connecting to the CDDB service. Of course, it's not gonna. It's not gonna because the service is probably gone. Okay. It somehow already had the track names. So, I don't know where it got them from. But we're going to just check off all of these, and we're going to rip every single one of them. And let's see. Options, rip tracks. So now we're ripping a CD using a piece of software that dates back to the dark ages of the computer world, 2001. And there you go. And that's how you did it. Of course, all this software was free. Malware was a new thing, and not everybody really knew about it. And earlier malware was pretty easy to get rid of, so you just sort of uninstalled it. Seriously, some of the earliest malware, a simple Windows uninstall would get rid of it. But it wasn't as malicious as it is today. So now that you've got a bit of a sneak peek into computing in the late 90s, early 2000s, for those of you who remember it, it was a fun time. For those of you who don't, you missed out on a lot because, you know, Microsoft was the predominant OS. It still is to this day, but Microsoft Windows was the predominant operating system everywhere, and Mac OS was really struggling. You know, it wasn't until Steve Jobs was only just beginning to turn the company around in 99, 2000. You know, the slew of new and innovative products. And people laughed at them, thinking, there's no way this company will ever succeed. I know all of my friends, only one or two of them was a Mac user. And I'm talking about kids that I really wasn't really friends with, but kids that I said that wrong. Anyway. But most of the people that I went to school with would just laugh at Macs and Apple in general. And honest to God, no one thought that Apple would become the powerhouse it is today. No one saw the smartphone movement becoming what it is today. And no one even would think that Apple would ever get into the phone business. A lot has changed in 15 years. A lot has changed. But Windows 98 is still in the backs of our memories as one of the worst operating systems ever because it was so unreliable. It was not prepared for the onslaught of web threats that were killing Windows machines all over the place, and it was just so unstable. And that's really all I have to say about that. So I'm going to let this rip the rest of this CD, and I'm going to go watch some movies on my modern Windows 10 machine. Yes, I have Windows 10, and I'm loving it. I've got it on my home theater box, and someday I'll make a video of it. Maybe not. I don't know. But I will say this. The upgrade for me from Windows 7 to 10 was about as smooth as it could possibly be. Not a single issue. Not a single error. Not a single device on my home theater box was ill-prepared for the upgrade. Everything went smoothly. And on that note, I'm going to get back to what I was going to do. And stay tuned. I'm going to do a video on something very interesting very soon.